With this, I would like to invite our first panel of the day, of which Joaquín was also a part of it. So our moderator today is Mr. Shantanu Srivastava, leader, Sustainability ThinkThrough Consulting. We have Mr. Rahul Khera, founder and CEO Balancing Bits, Mr. Joaquín, who joined us online, and then we have Dr. Vivek S. Agrawal, Managing Director at Greentech Infra Private Limited, and Mr. Arun Murugesh, Vice President, Sales and Marketing, Sahaas Zero Waste. We invite our panelists and our moderator to please join us up at the dais, and I request the moderator to now take over.
Thank you. All the organizers, Jessica and Virginia in particular, for putting this together. On this panel right in the morning, we have a bunch of people who are pioneers in waste management and circularity, not just in India, but cross borders. Now, for our friends who are from outside India, India has understood the meaning of circularity very well for two basic reasons. One, the legislations from the government end have become stringent for the disposal and management of waste over time. There are guided regulations and frameworks that prohibit use of waste for just the waste purpose, but they are now encouraging people to get into circularity, reuse the material in the final products, a percentage of it which has not been disposed properly, and look at something which can give us a value proposition for further integrations. So Arun, Dr. Agrawal and Rahul, you've all been in this field for many years. You've understood the trade. You understood waste is not the end, but is the beginning of another product that gets into circularity. So let's start with Arun. Would like you to introduce yourself, give a bit of background about what Sahaas Zero Waste is doing in India, and how well can circularity be brought to the forefront globally, trans borders, have a social inclusion, have a women participation. How can we scale it up? And what is it that you think on the subject? Thank you.
Thank you, Shantanu. Good morning, everyone. Great to see a wide variety of audience here. And just quickly, something about myself. I'm an engineer by background. I started my waste management career back in the UK, basically designing MRFs in the UK. And since then, came back to India, worked for corporate, had my own startup, used to recycle thermocol waste, styrofoam, for those of you outside India. And since then, I've been with this organization, Sahaas Zero Waste, which is a social enterprise. It's been more than a decade. This company has evolved from a not-for-profit. So 22 years back, our founder, Vilma Rodriguez, she started this not-for-profit. But then, we realized that, a decade back, we need to bring in a services perspective into waste management. It's like any other services industry, right? You need to provide high-level quality professional services for you to be able to do something about it at scale. So that's why we started the private limited company as a social enterprise, and today we have a variety of things that we work with, a very holistic approach into waste management, whether it is your organic waste, inorganic waste, e-waste, textile waste. Tomorrow we'll be visiting some of the facilities that we've set up as model facilities in Gurgaon. We also work with glass, e-waste, etc. So what is it that we bring to the table here for the concept of circular economy, where one of the very unique MRFs or concepts, I can say, business models, which are able to recover a minimum of 60% of your waste through recycling. And then the rest of it, around 30% of it, would be used as energy recovery through what we call as co-processing over here. and less than 5% will go to the landfill. So this is a business model that we've evolved around dry waste management. You know that 30% of resource recovery that happens through energy recovery, we're trying to find a model for that as well. And we're going to witness some of the activities tomorrow on how do we recover textile waste, how do we recover low value plastics. So we bring along a lot of importance to low value plastic, and we work with entrepreneurs, local entrepreneurs, in a very inclusive way. And we have a model called as a social inclusion model where, you know, we have waste pickers turned entrepreneurs, and we want to set up enterprises for them. And that's how we expand our partner network as well. We also work with women's self-help groups in rural. We're technical partners with the government as well to set up many more MRFs. So that is another project which is close to our heart. And we've been able to scale up a model. And I'll just quickly explain in a minute on how we've done this. We have our own MRFs that we've set up around 6 to 7 years back, and they have become good flagship program. So what we then did was we started engaging with the government to try and see how they can leverage some of the funds and set up more. And that is how we've been able to, I mean, the government's vision was to have 200 of this in one of the states in southern India, but currently there are around 20 of these that have come up. Long way to go, but that then becomes a nice scalable model as well. So these are the variety of things that we do, and would be happy to share more as we go along in the day.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you so much. On the inclusion part, Dr. Agrawal, I remember you've been a pioneer in social inclusion while it comes to waste collection and transportation and the miscellaneous projects you've been doing in India, plus your learnings from your chair at the International Solid Waste Management Association. Would you like to throw some light on that, sir?
Thank you, Shantanu. Thanks for remembering me. And in fact, my journey is a little different. I started as a student of waste management in 1994. I'm a medical graduate, so was working with mother and child health at that time, was working with UNICEF. And one fine day, the mayor of Jaipur, he had thrown a challenge to us that what hell you are doing? You cannot achieve mother and child health just merely by doing mother and child health kind of activities, unless you address the issue of waste which is piling up on every nook and corner of the Jaipur city. That really struck. And we found that there is a gap. There is a gap between the waste producer and the municipal functions. Municipal function starts from the dump site, the community bin or somewhere. So we said this is the gap. There are cultural gaps. There are practice-related gaps. So we started that in 1994 August. We were not sure whether it will work or not. We started with door-to-door garbage collection at that time. We were not sure because everyone used to say that you are white-collar people, doctors and all. You cannot work. This is not your cup of tea. But blessing in disguise, September 1994, India, in one part of India, Surat, we had pneumonic plague. And the root cause of pneumonic plague was sanitation. So we moved to Surat at that time and started with that. And it worked. When it worked, then it worked for all. But we had this struggle for 20 years till 2014 when the Swachh Bharat mission, the Clean India mission came in place. But before that, this journey gave us a lot of learnings. As Shantanu mentioned, we were really concerned about the people who are involved into waste management. And that's a concern even today. You will be surprised and shocked to know that my waste worker, any waste worker globally, leave aside few Western countries where there is a very less of human handling, have 2/3 of the life expectancy than the average human being. And still, it is not considered as a hazardous industry. When it is not a hazardous industry, then what happens? They are not considered as the vulnerable groups. And when they are not vulnerable, the benefits do not pass on to them. So that was a concern to us, to a group of socially concerned health professionals. So we started doing something in that direction, and we said they also need some kind of intervention on the occupational health. It's an occupational health hazard even today, and there the role of all kind of technology comes. If we look at the circularity, it's not a new word to the India. It's not new. It's not new even to Latin America. If we go culturally, there are many, many similarities between Latin America and Indian civilization. But we have forgotten all those over the period of time, or I should not blame, but the colonization has affected it the most. So the whole circle got broken at that time. We use a word called Sanatan here. You must have heard this word, those from India or from outside also. Sanatan. The word Sanatan means, which is synonym of Indian civilization, which does not have, where you do not know where it began and where it will end. And what is circularity? You do not have the beginning, you do not have the end.
Exactly the same. No arrow goes out of the system, and
Yes.
there is no linearity in circularity.
Yeah. So for us, circularity is since ages, time immortal, in fact. So we started practicing that right from that moment. When Word was talking about 3R, reduce, reuse, recycle, India used to practice 8R even at that time. But due to some Western influence, we have forgotten all those good practices, the best practices. Even today, we do not rethink about the generation. We do not do the repurposing in a manner we should have done. We do not reuse the things the way we should use and we used to have it in the past. And the word repair has gone out of the circle. So what is needed today when we are talking about this circularity? We should think beyond 3 hours to 8 hours. We have to integrate people, and that will create enormous scope as an enterprise also. We are fighting like these days we are struggling on right to repair. In some of the countries, right to repair is there. But in most of the countries, still we do not have right to repair. How many jobs it can create? We have moved from that kind of infra to a monopolized infrastructure now. Now the companies are having monopoly. In India, in some way, it started, right to repair was started with the automobile, farming equipments and electronics, but not prevalent. Still, if we really want to do something in the space of circularity, we need to involve all the sectors to right to repair. And as far as the inclusion is concerned, this is the only space. The waste management is the only space where all kind of professionals, all kind of fraternities, they have a role to play, and everyone is a stakeholder into it. So we can move
Sir.
further.
Thank you so much for that insightful observation. Balancing bits is doing wonderful things, Rahul. What have you learned? Where do you think beyond resource efficiency that we can take circularity to? And you had a pertinent question in the morning, which was, beating the time zones and looking at a cross-border journey.
Right.
We saw the video also. Would you like to throw some light on it? Is there actually a geography agnostic circularity that is possible? And what kind of regulations would you as an entrepreneur wish, which gives you that kind of a, freedom to expand?
Sure. Thank you, Shantanu, and thank you, Team Ecos, for inviting me for this panel. So I'll start with a small introduction of myself and the company. So I'm Rahul Khera. I am founder of Balancing Bits. Balancing Bits is a growing social enterprise which is primarily working on decentralized waste management. So when I say decentralized waste management, that means our models are such that we try to process the waste as close to the source of generation as possible. So we started in 2017, and since then we have grown at a decent pace. And today we are having around 50 projects where we have implemented waste management for bulk waste generators. So bulk waste generator is anyone who is generating more than 100 kgs of waste as per the definition. So we have around 50 projects running where we are processing the waste of these bulk waste generators near to the source. And on daily basis, we are handling around 20 tons of waste for these bulk waste generators through these 50 projects that we are running. Coming to my understanding and what I wish the circularity could be in a country or over the globe is that most of the time what happens is that circularity or the circular economy is actually confused with recycling and recycling economy. Wherein if we look deeply and we try to understand it deeply, what we have to focus upon now, we have kind of missed that bus of recycling, to be very honest. We are at a point where we have to focus on reducing the waste. So as the core principles of circular economy, I think the focus has to be on the design changes of the products and services so that the waste generation could be minimized, which is globally, I see. There are few Western countries, I think European Union is working something on the circular economy policy, but I see that missing in Indian subcontinent. I'll have to still learn about what is happening in Argentina. But yeah, what we are primarily working upon is recycling economy, not the circular economy. There's very little thought, very little focus on the design part of it. So once we have that design part in place, we can assure that the waste generation in itself is getting reduced. The second thing that the co-panelist brought up was about the right for repair. So basically what right for repair gives us is the longer lifespan of a product. So that is something that has to be pushed into the industry. And when we talk about these two changes, design change and a longer lifespan, then try to understand from a business perspective, it's a make or a break kind of decision. This is something which is customer facing. Any design change, longevity of the product is going to impact how the customer perceive and use the product, right? So that has to be very carefully treaded. The business has to think through a lot. It's a strategic decision for them. So there has to be certain regulation that provides level playing field for all the businesses where they can implement or at least think about implementing circularity. It cannot be a voluntary thing. As a more ethical business, I might want to implement it, but I would definitely see that from a business point of view, my competitor gets an advantage if I do that. So there has to be a regulatory framework. It has to be an ecosystem effort. It cannot be just by the businesses, just by the government. It has to be a combination of
participative model basically.
Yes.
Where all key stakeholders and acting forces come and, as you rightly said, create a level playing field which encourages this.
Definitely.
Because even if under the right to repair, if the shelf life or the longevity of a product increases, somewhere down the line, it also has to be given a new shape.
Definitely.
Plus, the newer product,
In fact, we have forgotten the concept of end of life.
correct,
Now, that is no more prevalent.
true. So even the product henceforth created has to have a kind of a value proposition and a life cycle to it, which integrates into the economy.
That's right.
Which is exactly what, the players in the waste management industry are trying to do.
Right.
And a favorable regulation for ecosystem creation would definitely be a delta, which is, which we all want to achieve
Right.
in life.
Right.
So this was what we were trying to discuss on how is circularity gaining shape in India? What is it that can happen across geographies, regulations, framework, ultimate bottom line called resource efficiency and reuse for a particular product to a certain category beyond which it actually has to be changed into another life. There is where the end of life gives value to a circularity. Dr. you have a point.
In fact, I just want to highlight one thing, that in India, we have the best regulations available. If you look at the rules which were framed in 2016, may it be for the solid waste management, for the plastic, for biomedical waste, for construction demolition waste, for everything, we have the robust rules available, robust policies available. But when it comes to the ground level, then there is a big gap. We recently conducted one CAP, knowledge, attitude, practice, post 2014. So there is a high increase at the knowledge level. Attitude is there, almost 50%. But when it comes to the practice, it is really negligible. So why it is happening? We diagnose that thing. It's because we, the waste producers, the users, we are not concerned. We are not concerned, and we have given up everything to the public sector or to the government that they will do that. So I always ask one question, and asking this question to you as well. Do you know any industry where someone produces and not concerned where my product will be marketed or will be used? We all are industries. We all are industries producing waste every day, and we are not concerned. Unless we get concerned, we cannot achieve. In that video, the soul of SDG is SDG 12. And if you look at the index of SDG implementation across the globe, not much is done on SDG 12. And unless we focus on SDG 12, we cannot achieve anything called circular economy or anything towards the climate change. We can talk a lot. We can talk a lot. Recently, we are having this Mahakumbh going on in Prayagraj. That's an example, illustrious thing, if you look at the circularity or for the sustainable management of the area. We can talk a lot on that at some other point.
So, ladies and gentlemen, any questions that you would like to ask? The panel can answer that in the paucity of time. If there are subsequent discussions as follow-up, Jessica and Virginia would be happy to connect us with all of you and we can take it up. Yes, ma'am, you have a question?
Yes, I want to know how education and schools are integrated into policies or into waste management practices. I understand that kids many times are the ones that bring changes to the family in a way that is different for us, the adults, to have cultural changes and behaviors. So I wonder if in India there are some people working in that field.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Thank you for that question. I would request Dr. Agrawal to kindly answer that, please.
As far as school-based or curriculum-based education is concerned, or that is there, may not be at the primary level, but the higher education level. Whereas that should be a part of the primary education. But prior to that, or I would say that instead of just educating students at the, in the classes. It is more required to be taught at the home level. And unless that is done, in India we had the practice. We had the practice to teach our wards at the home level, and we had certain disciplines for them. Let me just quote one example that about the food waste. In India, the practice was we cannot leave anything in the plate. That was a tradition, that was a culture. But over the period of time, and with this fast food and everything coming to the home, we have lost that culture. So we will have to rejuvenate that thing. If we go to any social gathering, you will find a huge quantity of food getting waste. So that need to be taught. In fact, I would just share that if we were leaving anything in the plate, my mother used to say that you will not get another meal because you have wasted some food in your plate. But that kind of discipline is not there. Mothers are not that courageous. Parents are not that courageous. So they'll have to bring that courage to stop second meal or to deprive a child from second meal if they leave something in their plate. Same happens with any other thing. So the teaching should start from home. A school may accelerate the pace, but not the foundation.
I'd just like to add to that. So perfectly right. We've seen a big change can happen with children going back home and demanding proper waste management, like segregation at source. So we've seen this happen. I agree with Doctor that it doesn't happen as a framework in primary education, but it's starting to happen at the undergraduate level now. For example, there are elective subjects around waste management in some of the universities. That's fantastic. There are some good masters, post-graduation courses around climate and circularity. We have some very prestigious ones in Delhi as we speak as well. So this is coming up now. But there also, we've seen initiatives by corporates, like top FMCG companies are mobilizing volunteers, students, of course there is a bit of a stipend there, who would go to every door-to-door, every individual house to actually promote segregation at source. And I'll tell you what, this is the fundamental problem around waste management today that we face as a company, which is access to waste. Let's say we set up infrastructure for waste, there is no waste coming in. And even if it's coming in, it's
not
mixed.
segregated. It is not segregated.
It's mixed. And
So
once you mix it, you can't fix it.
Correct. And the segregation of waste at source primarily remains the problem.
At the households.
With the current infrastructure and the way, with the current infrastructure and the way it is being collected in the country, I can bet we cannot achieve it. Because the kind of equipment we have or the machinery we have is not designed for that. Unless we introduce separate collection system as it is in practice across the globe, we cannot achieve that. I think he has a question.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. This is regarding waste dumps the world over. It doesn't matter in India or anything else. One of the things known about the waste dumps is that, let me take my glasses off, I look very yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, one of the things about waste dumps is that they generate dioxin. Sir would know, Dr. Saab, 3 kinds of dioxins are there. One is a grade 1 carcinogen. Okay, no doubts. Everything is clear on that issue. Nobody does a dioxin survey in kilometers away from the dump site. It is such a powerful cancerogenic agent, carcinogenic agent, that this needs to be done. Okay, that is the problem that it causes. But I have visited people who deal with, hydrogen generation from various things. They might have a solution to this because the furnace that is given at dump sites, they don't reach that temperature where the dioxin degrades. It doesn't get that temperature. So there is a pyrolysis process which is not expensive. It comes out of the waste itself. The temperatures do rise and the dioxins do finish. Otherwise, we will keep seeing cancer rates going up because it's a definite carcinogen.
And if we don't measure cancer rates at certain radius from the dump site, regardless of what happens to the property rates, we've got too much, I may also add, the rules, with all due respect, because most people here are also rule makers somewhere, are always made with the objective of making those poor rich guys a little bit more richer. So, Bharat stage 6 is very important. We must reach that. Jump Bharat stage 5, but we will not study dioxin. Okay? It's non-glamorous, it is cancerous, it's everything, and nobody's going to make money out of it. So please take care of this wherever, whichever country you are in. Measure dioxin levels, measure cancer levels in various radius from dump sites. 1 point, 2 point, microplastics, everybody knows. So thank you, sir, for giving me the chance. Thank you.
You're absolutely right, and the dioxin level is increasing in the environment. And if you look at the study, there is a study published in Lancet about 6 months back on some of the dump sites globally. It clearly suggests that how the dioxins are emitted out of these dump sites, and another potential source of dioxin is open burning, and which is prevalent everywhere. And open burning, unless we check on the open burning and the dump sites, the carcinoma is bound to increase, in fact, and the malignancy rate across the globe has increased 4 times. 4 times, and that is courtesy majorly these dump sites and the open burning. And another thing which I would like to highlight, because he has raised one issue, that the gap is increasing between haves and have-nots. Yes, that's true. And he mentioned about Bharat stage 6. So my question here again is, how we decide the policies? The policies are largely decided for people who are rich or who have some stakes in the policy making. We do not raise any voice. Hardly there are any agitations for the waste. I raised one question and wrote about it recently about the scrap policies. How the scrap policy should be framed. It is considering the automobile industry or the environment. We are creating more scrap out of this scrap policy, because through this scrap policy, we have to off-road diesel vehicles after 10 years and petrol vehicles after 15 years, or petrol vehicles after 15 years. But how about the environment? If they are good at the environmental scale, if they are good on the pollution control check, the data is available online, that can be monitored, and if they fail on that indicator, they need to be scrapped, not the good vehicles. If you look at the average running of the vehicles, you will find it's not much. If it is not much,
they've passed the age of timeline.
So it should not be done just merely by age, but by other criteria which are related to the environment and other parameters.
I would like to add to the question that you asked. So the source of dioxins, dump sites, open burning definitely, but we also have to closely monitor the so-called fancy solutions of waste to energies as well. Waste to energies, they might be projected as a very green solution, but they might not always be.
So the energy efficiency has to be noted
right.
particularly.
And waste to energy also somewhere kind of dilutes the principle of circular economy, because, for example, in India, EPR rules for plastic allows end of life as incineration in waste to energy. So that is not true circularity, to be very honest. So all of these also has to be viewed through a lens which can validate the theories which are there on paper.
Absolutely right.
And I'm sure the EPR coming in 2026, the
Yes,
rules,
for other packaging products.
other packaging product, including
Rahul
glass.
is absolutely right. In fact, this issue we do not even discuss because we are more driven by the industry. We are more driven by haves,
Right.
not by have-nots. And the impact of waste to energy on the surroundings, that need to be measured. The health impact in particular, the mutation which takes place out of it. So that is a major concern. We are not concerned about it.
Yeah.
Competing the waste to energy model with the segregation and recovery here in India. Is there like a competition in the model? Like, is it waste to energy or is it segregation and recovery?
See, unfortunately, waste to energy industry has lot of incentives. And as I mentioned, there are a lot of promotional schemes to set up waste to energy. Because urban local bodies also, they want a smoother route. A smoother route means they do not want to work on the segregation. They talk about segregation. They have that kind of equipment which is painted from outside, suggesting dry and wet waste. But if you look at inside those vehicles, you'll find the mixed waste. Arun is facing a lot of problem accessing waste. In fact, when we started our career in '94, we wanted biodegradable waste, and we had to bribe those people to get the segregated waste. So that's a big problem. So it is driven by the industry, and industry wants to set up waste to energy plants because that is capital intensive, that has a lot of incentives available, and as Rahul mentioned, it's very true that the impact is very, very bad. And they are not successful even.
And coming back to the question that you just asked, even for
Investment
a
is going
resourceful
into
waste
drains.
to energy, you have to have a source segregation. Otherwise, the energy efficiency can never be achieved.
That's right.
So ultimately,
I'm talking more about the manual segregation.
ultimately, it is actually boiling down to what has been produced, how it had been taken care of, and is the material getting into energy efficiency or energy recovery? Is it having sufficient calorific value to fire even 1 volt of energy? So
And
all that actually would understandable from policy and the
Yes.
segregation, that is the key value for every resource system.
In fact, we'll have to look at it in simple terms. Whenever we set up an industry, we look at the raw material. That on the quality of raw material, the quantity of raw material. But we do not have the segregation in place. And unless we have the segregation in place for anything, may it be your MRF or may it be for biodegradable waste or waste to energy, everywhere you need a certain level of segregation, which is not there. The certain level of segregation will give you good quality raw material. And unless you have access to good quality raw material, you cannot run the industry, whatever good setup you have.
I can just add to that. So
Yeah.
waste to energy plants have not been successful. That's very clear. A lot of them have come up and they've been shut down. But in answer to your question,
Subsidies.
yeah, probably, and that's why they were established. But in answer to your question, it's actually counterproductive. It starts to reduce segregation at source. That is the linkage that I've seen. But then at the end of the day, when this goes down, automatically you get back to your regular. For example, I'm from Bangalore, a city called Bangalore. We've had a new waste to energy plant. Finally, they've been able to set it up. But then there was an explosion there, and there were loss of lives within the plant itself. So before it got started in pilot mode itself, it's starting to come down. So basically, in answer to your question, it may cause segregation at source to start going down, but at the end of the day, they've not been successful and they've not been able to scale up as well. So at the moment, at least we're fine,
I'll take a minute to
Sure.
Please.
So how I look at it is, see, we have to get our basics right. As a solution, I am not against waste to energy. I am against what is going into it and whether the monitoring is happening or not. Okay, so both these solutions, I think it has to be a hybrid model, because not everything has a circular path. There are some things that has to go to end of life through incineration in a waste to energy. So it has to be a complementing model, but we have to very carefully decide what goes where.
Great. Thank you. Any further questions? Yes, please.
I'm going to ask on behalf of Alfredo because he asked the question in Spanish. He's saying, how do you see job creation, creation of employment through circular economy? How is that working out?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so right now with circular economy, the buzzword is PCR when it comes to plastic post-consumer recyclate. So when you take plastic waste and you recycle it, there is a very big importance, and it's a legislation-led thing in India as well. Currently, a lot of recycling, etc., is coming up there. Now, why am I bringing up this one aspect around recycling, which is important? Because recycling tends to start then distributing profits equitably across the supply chain. If you fix the problem around plastics, right, and more infrastructure is coming in, the more you fix the problem around plastics, and all plastic, not just high value but low value as well, you start to then start incentivizing the rest of the supply chain. Your rest of the supply chain starts to grow, they start to get profitable, and that is how you'll be able to get scale. So in my opinion, if you ask me, what I've seen on the ground, the reality today, plastics is a very big problem, followed by textile. If you're able to recover high resource levels at that stage, you then start seeing livelihood creation all across the supply chain. That's...
Yes. And in the plastic ecosystem also, there is no fair price index of buying the recycled or reused plastic. So that again is a platform where a lot of technology and artificial intelligence can be brought in, which gives another sphere of more employments, more technical jobs, and therefore more livelihoods.
If you quantify the livelihood creation out of the waste management, on every 500 population, there is one livelihood opportunity available.
Does that answer
This
your
is the
question?
largest.
Any more questions before we close the panel in the morning? Thank you, panelists, for your time and for your resourceful integration of your thoughts into, what the subject was. It was a pleasure interacting with you, and I would like to request Virginia and Jessica to keep us informed of anything further that we could add value to, and let's take it forward as a resource property rather than, just one event. So we're happy to be a part of it, Virginia, whenever you think, and we would slot time and discuss it online with you also. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We invite you to have a picture here, please.
Okay.
Yes.